Hello and happy Wednesday. I'm so excited because we're only like 2 weeks away from finishing this book. And it is kind of sad because I don't know what book I'm going to do next. But I'm also really excited because that gives me the options to really figure out like what book to do, if I want to focus it more on just like personal growth and things like that, or we're reading the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. We have book study coming up with our Plexus group, so I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I'm really excited that this book is almost done. I feel like reading it is such an encouragement to me, and it's definitely something that I struggle with, and I think as like busy parents or busy moms, even just like people in school, you have a lot going on. Like life is always busy, and I was just talking to somebody about that. Like I always say, oh, when the summer comes, things are going to slow down, and I feel like the summers are always the craziest because it's like we're out of routine, but somehow things just like pile up, and then there's like traveling and vacations and all the things. So I don't know what I'm going to do next, but we are on chapter 14 and 15 this week of The Circle Maker. If you haven't grabbed the book, this book study is almost over, but it doesn't mean that you don't go and get it. Go and get the book. I find them on Thrift Books for super cheap. You can also check eBay. A lot of times the books on there have free shipping. I like to like write in mine. So you could go to the library, check it out as well. I don't know if your local library have it. Mine doesn't really have a lot of good books for adults, especially in like personal development or anything like that. So anyway, all options. Go and grab the book, read it, and put on your list like once a year or every couple of years, or however often you can read it, because it will stretch your faith and it will grow you. And so that's all I'm gonna say. We'll get right into it. This is chapter 14 to 15. I combined them. Chapter 14 was a long chapter, but I only pulled a couple of notes out of it. And then chapter 15 again was a long chapter, but it was packed with some really good things. So starting off on page 162, he says, if you want to experience a supernatural breakthrough, you have to pray through. But as you get closer to the breakthrough, it often feels like you're about to lose control. That is when you press in and pray through. So a lot of times we get to the point where we're praying through something, or we're like almost defeated, really. And we kind of think like, what is God doing? Like, why is he not answering? It's been, 2 months or 2 years or 12 years, whatever it is. And you feel like you're just in this season of just like sitting there. But the author says like, just keep pressing in, praying through, because the breakthrough will happen. Yes, Betty?
Can I have a floating ball?
Okay, that's fine, baby. Okay.
That's fine, baby.
Yes, that's fine, baby. Then he continues on, when you get to the point where you care more about what God thinks and less about what people think, you're getting close to the breakthrough. And I read this, I don't even remember, a couple days ago, and it kind of just like hit me, and I was like, that is so powerful, because we really do as people, and I am an introvert. I tend to not really care what people's opinions of me are, but I think there are also some instances where, we control our life because we don't want to be perceived a certain way, or we don't want people to think a certain thing, whether right or wrong. And so like Nathan and I had a conversation yesterday, and I had my ladies book study, and it was talking about like pride and Nebuchadnezzar and how he was so filled with pride, and he built this golden statue so people would worship him, and he had so much power and so much wealth, but he didn't use it for good. And I think like, we tend to shift our actions and our motives based off of like what people think about us. And instead of just like, sitting and saying, God, like, my heart. And so if I do this, I want to do it for the right reasons. I want to, use my social media for the right reasons, or I want to use my job for the right reasons, or my wealth for the right reasons, or whatever it is. And so to really get down and say, what, it doesn't matter what people are going to think about me, what they're going to perceive about me, what my, actions are, or my thoughts are, or whatever. If my heart is aligned with what God wants me to do, then I'm doing the right thing. And so people can think and say what they want, but I know my heart is pure, and God's going to hold you accountable for that over what their actions towards you are. And I think that's so important. So on page 164, he says, maybe you're on day 1 of praying through to the breakthrough. Maybe you're on day 20. Either way, you can pray with holy confidence, knowing that with each prayer circle, you are one prayer closer. the answer is on the way. And we talked about in a previous chapter how our prayers are like a bond in heaven. And so every time we pray, then, God's taking that and he's creating this like promise in heaven that it's going to be fulfilled in his perfect timing. And so our prayers will never go unheard and our prayers will never go unanswered. It's just when. It's an option of when it's going to happen, not if it's going to happen. Page 167, the great danger when God does a miracle is that we get comfortable. If we aren't careful, we can lose faith simply because we already have what we need. And then he goes on to say, one reason God does miracles is to stretch our faith so we can draw bigger circles, so he can do bigger and better miracles. And I kind of read through that a couple of times because I'm like, that sounds like a little strange. But then I sat and I kind of just like kept reading it and kept thinking on it. And I think it's, obviously it's so true. He does miracles so he can stretch our faith, because if he didn't ever grant us our prayers, if he didn't ever stretch our faith and he just kept us comfortable, how much would we actually rely on him? But when he does a miracle, when he answers a prayer, when he allows us to achieve something that we never thought we could, then our faith is stretched and allows us to think bigger and dream bigger because we know God is going to answer our prayers. And I think that, a lot of times it's like we don't really see all of the answered prayers that God has answered. And so a prayer journal or gratitude journal are so important to keep track of those things, because you see all of the little ways that God was faithful and you start praying for the bigger things. And then you see those big things, being answered and come to light, and you think, he really is answering my prayers. It just sometimes takes a lot longer than we'd like. Page 168, good decisions on a daily basis has a cumulative effect that pays dividends the rest of your life. The good news, you're only one defining decision away from a totally different life. And it goes back to the thing of habits. And I did a whole book study on habits and building habits and forming habits and good habits that you should have and bad habits that you need to get rid of. So if you haven't watched those book studies, you need to go back to my YouTube channel, go ahead and search my Instagram handle on YouTube at Taylor Chantel, and all of my book studies will come up. But go through the habits, because it's, one defining decision away from a totally different life. And I hear that so often, but it's like if you just stick to 2 or 3 habits every single day, they're going to compound. It's like putting money in the bank and having that interest come in. That's going to happen with your habits, and your life's going to become different, and it's going to change because you've been building these good habits. I was even listening to a podcast yesterday, and if you've heard of Ed Milet, he's a big time guy. He's a business person. He literally owns his own island. He's very wealthy. And he was talking about the habit of flossing, and he's like, I floss every single day, not because I like to, not because I see the difference, but he said it's something I hate doing. And because I hate doing it so much, it's so important that I do it. And so he said, I floss every single day because then my body signals, okay, you can do hard things. You can do the things that you don't want to do, and it will make a difference. So that's the end of chapter 14. So we'll jump right into chapter 15. And chapter 15 is all about setting goals, all about setting, leaning into the big dreams and bold prayers that God puts on your heart. And he even gives a list of setting goals. So we'll go through those. In the book, he kind of gives a list of what his life goals are, and he kind of structures them. So if you have the book, go through and look at that. It's super encouraging to kind of see some of the big things that he put on his list, and to really kind of get your mind going a certain direction and to thinking bigger than what you even think is possible. So starting on page 176, he says, setting goals creates structural tension in your brain, which will seek to close the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Goal setting is good stewardship of your right brain imagination and is also great for your prayer life. And so I don't remember if it was this book or another book, we talked about how there's 2 different sides of your brain. One is logical and one is imagination. And so he's saying the right brain, a lot of times as we get older, we stop practicing in our right brain. And so we stop thinking and dreaming big, whereas as a kid, our imagination is insane. My kids, I give them a box, I'm not even joking, and their imagination is, it's a car, it's a train, it's a bus, or it's a grocery store, and they put all the food in it and they have to go shopping, or whatever it is, a food truck. their brain goes wild with the things that they can do with just a box. And like as adults, our brain, if we don't practice that imagination, it kind of stops, and we stop thinking big, and we stop dreaming and using that imagination. And so he said setting goals is good stewardship of your right brain and your imagination. Goals are the cause and effect of praying hard. They don't just keep you praying hard because it's the only way you'll accomplish God-sized dreams. Goals give you a prayer target. And so you're going to keep praying hard, and you're going to have something to, when you sit down and you get with the Lord and you start praying, you're going to have something that you're specifically praying for. There's something that your brain is actually actively shooting, targets. You think of a bullseye, and you know exactly what you're going to pray for. And you might not know the ins and outs, but that's something to bring to the Lord and ask him to show you. And then he says, page 177, goals are dreams with deadlines. So then he gives his 10 steps to setting goals, and it starts on page 179. And his first one, if you have a pen and paper, write these down so you can keep them, and then you can set up your own goals. And using these guidelines will really be a good start in helping you get goals started. So number 1, start with prayer. And he says, pray, meditate, and even fast to allow God to show you what he has for your life. No goal or dream thought up during your prayer time with God is too big or too small for God to use you to accomplish. If your goals and dreams don't align or glorify God, then they aren't worth setting. And so it's so important to really go to the Lord and pray and ask him, is this what you want for my life? Maybe it's something that in your heart, you're like, man, this would be so amazing. And so ask God, ask him to show you if this is something that he really has for you, or maybe if he has a different direction for your life, or ask him for guidance on getting to that point. Then he'll change you and he'll grow you and he'll get you where he wants you to be, as long as it is something that he's placed on your heart that is for him and his glory. And then number 2, so we have 1, start with prayer. 2, check your motives. Again, going back to, if it's not glorifying to God, it's not worth setting. So check your motives. Make sure you are going after your goals for the right reasons. Stop setting getting goals and start setting giving goals. And he talks about how him and his wife really changed that perspective. Instead of saying, allow me to get this car, or allow me to get this job, or allow me to get this number in our church, or allow me to get this location for a ministry, or whatever it was, he stopped setting just getting goals and started setting giving goals, allow our church to give X amount of missions, allow my family to use X amount of money for your glory, for ministry. And that was a big shift that he had made. And I think that's so smart, because a lot of times we look at ourselves and we say, well, I want X, Y, and Z. And so we start praying for those things, but what are we giving? What can we use more money for? How can we use that for God's glory? And so start setting those goals alongside of the things that God puts on our heart. And even sometimes selfishly we want things, and it's not a bad thing if we can use it for God's glory, but make sure that those align. So after all, you make a living by what you get, but you make a life by what you give. So number 3, think in categories, and he gives 5 different categories that he personally uses to set different goals. So 1 is family, 2 is influential, 3 is experiential, 4 is physical, and 5 is travel. And so in the book, he goes through each one and he breaks them down, so you can go through and look at them. But he says all of these goals have a spiritual dimension, so that was purposely omitted. So you don't see on here, spiritual goal, witnessing to a certain number of people, or for him, he's a pastor, so a certain number of baptisms, or, people saved, or whatever it is. He doesn't have those, because in each one, there's a certain aspect of spirituality, whether it's, for family, if you want your family to do a certain thing, well, you are going to have God guide you and show you the path for your family. Influential, the people that you, interact with, or the impact that you make with people on your life. Even this book study, I don't do this book study, for my own glory. I do it because I really felt like a year ago, God was telling me, start a book study. And I thought, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? And we do, Zoom book studies and stuff like that. But I allow myself to just get uncomfortable, just hit that live button on Instagram and do these book studies, because it's really challenged me to be able to show up and it's allowed me to do something that was way out of my comfort zone. So again, going back, family, influential, experiential, physical, travel, all those 5 things, break up into your goals into those categories and then pray over them and figure out what God wants for you. Number 4, be specific. Make it measurable. Add ages, time limits, amounts, actions to your goal. Don't just say, I want to lose weight. Again, we talked about this in the habits. Like, be very specific with your goal. If you want to lose weight, what is the exact amount of pounds you want to lose? I want to lose 15 pounds. I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to lose 100 pounds. It can be small, 5 pounds. It doesn't matter. Just put that limit there so you can keep track and then find a way to keep track. So for me, my scale has a smart app. So what I do is I step on the scale with my app open in the morning and it tracks, okay? So I do that every single day and I can see exactly where I was 6 months ago. I can see where I was a year ago and I can see how much closer to my goal that I'm getting. It shows it on a graph. It shows every day the ups and downs, or, the downs and then the ups. Like, it's not consistent. So find a way to measure your goal with something specific. If you want to save money, how much do you want to save? If you want to make more money, how much more money do you want to make? And then how are you going to get there? Add that to it as well. Number 5, write it down. If you haven't written down your goals, you haven't really set them. Writing them down keeps you accountable and allows you to track and remember. So something that I did last year, at the end of the year, actually right after I finished reading this book, is I opened my notes in my phone and I wrote down just a life list of things that I want to accomplish in my life, whether it's like things in motherhood or it's stuff in life, if it's like work goals or whatever it was, if it's just small goals of savings amount or something like that. And then I would put like by a certain point. So by 2027, I want to accomplish XYZ. Or by the time I'm 35, I want to accomplish XYZ. Or before my children graduate, I want to take them here. And I'd write down the specific places or the things that are really specific to what I want that goal to be. But I put a timeline on it and I wrote it down, which is important to be able to track. And so a lot of times we'll forget. We'll say, oh, I really want to do this. But we don't remember. In 5 minutes, 20 minutes, or 5 weeks from now, it's going to be like, oh, what was that I said I really wanted to do? And we just don't remember. So write it down so you can track. Number 6, include others. We are relational creatures. When you go after a goal with another person, it doubles your joy. And I think that one thing in my business specifically is it really is about other people. You can help yourself and sometimes that feels good. But when you help somebody else and you see their wins, it's so much more encouraging to you because it's I got to be a part of something bigger than myself. And for me, that's hard because I am such an introverted person. So to go out there and not only build a relationship with somebody else, but, help them be accountable to reach their goals is hard for me because I'd rather just cheer them on the sidelines and say, hey, you're doing amazing. A friend was reaching for a really big goal in her business. And I was like, hey, I'll purchase from you. Let me help you towards your goal. And I'd rather be that person sometimes than the ones leading from the front and saying pushing them, keeping them accountable, things like that. But include other people. Allow yourself to expand your network. And even if it's just sharing your goal and saying, hey, I'm going after this really big thing. Can you pray with me for it? People want to take part in your life. And so allow that yourself to open up to that. And some extroverted people, I'm sure that's easy. But for me, it's not. For me, I just want to internalize everything and keep the extroverted out. Number 7, we're almost done. There's only 10. It says, celebrate along the way. Every goal accomplished is an answer to prayer. And so again, with the gratitude journal or, writing down of the answered prayers that you've had, things like that, celebrate everything. Sometimes if it's a really big goal, say, you know what, we're going for ice cream tonight, or we're going to have a nice dinner, or, let's book this vacation because, wow, what an amazing accomplishment. Or even if it's something small, I'm having dessert tonight because I just lost 10 pounds in the last month and I want to splurge. And it doesn't have to be a binge. It can be something small, I just had a cookie or whatever it is. It doesn't, treat yourself however you want. Go buy a new outfit because you're 10 pounds down. But allow yourself to celebrate every small win along the way. Number 8, dream big. On page 185, it says, God-sized goals turn into big people. God-sized goals turn us into big people. And so it's not about us, right? It's not about who we become or who we are in this life, but it's what impact are we having on heaven? How is God being glorified? And when we have God-sized goals and God answers the prayer, we can look back and say, it wasn't me. It wasn't because of all of these things that I did, but God allowed me. God gave me the guidance. God brought me the people, whatever it is, it's about God. And so I think that that's important because it points more glory to him. And when we allow him to take the glory, he wants to do more through us. And I have underlined in here too on page 185, it says you need God-sized goals that qualify as crazy. It's not just like goals that people look at and say, that might not happen, but ones that people look at and say, are you qualified to do this? Like, do you really think that this is something you can achieve? Because then more glory goes to God when it happens, because he put that in your heart. And I think in another book study we talked about how God puts dreams on our hearts and visions on our hearts and not anybody else's. And so people will look at us and say, you're going for this, and they'll think, she can't do that, or he can't do that, or that's not possible. But then realistically, like, yeah, we can. And it's not because of us. It's not because of what we can do. It's because of who God is and what he allows in our lives. Number 9, think long. If you want to dream until you die, you need to set goals that take a lifetime to achieve. And so he talks about, I think in his 50s and 60s, he wants to run a marathon. So think long. Don't just think, okay, I want to accomplish this in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. But lifelong goals, what do you want to do? And for him, I think he even said he wants to give $1 million to missions between him and his wife in the course of their lifetime. So it's not something that's specifically in this year or in the next 5 years, but it's in our lifetime, we want to give X amount. So you have to track, you have to figure out how much you're giving to missions. How much does that require? You don't know how much time you have on this earth. So really set that goal and work towards it every single day. And then that way, when you get to the end of your life, you can say, I accomplished this. God allowed me to do this. And I'm so grateful that I was able to do this for his glory. And then number 10, pray hard. Page 186, it says, God ordained goals are started in prayer, and prayer is what brings them to full term. So again, it goes back to the beginning. Praying, it's full circle, right? In the beginning, it said pray over your goals. Pray about God, what God wants for your life. And then ending, pray hard. You already know your goal. You started with your goal, and you're wrapping it in a nice little bow, and you're praying for it every single day. You're praying hard that God will answer it. And you don't let up the gas when you think, this is hopeless, right? We just talked about in the last chapter, when it seems like things are hard and they're daunting and we're at a roadblock or there's, the end of the road for us. That's not when you let off the gas. That's when you push in a little bit harder and you lean in a little bit harder and you pray a little bit harder because the answer's on the way. God's going to deliver an answer. We don't know when, we don't know how, but it is coming. Our prayers never go unheard or unanswered. It says prayer opens our spiritual eyes so we see sooner and further. Prayer is the way we take thoughts and dreams and ideas captive. And so again, it gives you a basis for what you're praying for. And it's good to sit down and thank God for what he's done and pray for those people around you when they're needing extra prayer, or when they pop into your head, just say a little prayer for them. But it also allows us to really put our dreams and ideas into words and have something to go to the Lord and really lay at his feet and say, God, you put this in my heart. Can you please show me the next step? Can you please show me what you want me to do? Can you please bring the people to me that you want me to impact? And so it's so important to start with prayer and end with prayer. So that is the end of chapter 15. I think next week is going to be the last week. We're in part 4. And there's only 2 chapters. So I think next week is going to be the end. I'm kind of excited. But it's been such a good book. It's been a really great book study. And I hope that it has been encouraging to you. I hope that it really allows you to dig deep into your prayer life. And I know sometimes we get caught up in just everything going on. It's hard to really sit and pray with God and, pour our hearts out to him while we're being distracted by children asking for protein balls or needing toilet paper in the bathroom or whatever it is. But it's important to put forth the effort. And even if it's just, it's the whole pray without ceasing. It doesn't have to be very formal. We don't have to be in our room at night on our knees praying before the Lord. And not that that's a bad thing, but sometimes we go through seasons of life that's not possible. And so do what you can do, pray, and God will always hear. And so keep that at the forefront of your mind. And I will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope this was encouraging, and we'll finish up. So I'll see you then.